Welcome to Science with Dr. J. This is the second episode in our series of 40 episodes. The title of this episode is Marching for Science. Why am I talking about marching for science? In April of 2017, a large number of scientists and people who support them went into marches in several cities in the United States, in Britain, in Germany, in Japan, Korea. And the reason they went in a march for science is because there was pressure from society and from government funding to reduce the amount of money available for science. And of course, when you reduce the amount of money available for scientific research, for scientists to do research and experimentation, this can very, very badly harm society in the long term. Because we became civilized, we became advanced, we achieved all the incredible and fantastic things that we have achieved because of science. Civilization has become much, much more advanced as a result of scientific research. So that's the basic idea behind the march, and I'd like to show you some of the placards that the people who marched, so that the messages in those placards, so that you can have an idea about what they were thinking, what the problems were. So the idea is to generate more understanding of what scientists do and how they think and what their objectives are, so that they can minimize this clash between science and society or science and government. So here's a placard that says, it's actually a quote from Neil deGrasse Tyson, and it says, "The good thing about science is that it's true, whether you believe in it or not. Once you establish a fact is true, it doesn't matter if you don't believe in it. Science is not religion, it's not dogma. So once you establish the facts stand by themselves. Your belief in it or not should be irrelevant." Here's another one. It says, "Science is real. Facts, not fantasy, is what we want." Because a lot of people say, well, I think it should be that way. Well, yeah, it's okay to express your opinion, but you should base it on fact. You can't just imagine something to be true and force others to think that way too. You have to use facts and data and observation as a basis for your claims or opinions. So that's what this placard is trying to say. Here's another one. Without science, it's just fiction, which means that you can make up any story you want. If it's not based on scientific research and experimentation and data, it's just a story. It means nothing. Okay, so it might be entertaining and fun, but we can't take it seriously if it's not backed up by evidence. And here's the last one I want to show you. This equal sign with a slash inside it means not equal to, which says evidence is not equal to opinion. Opinion is one thing, evidence is something else. In science we rely on evidence, not opinion. So it doesn't matter who you are, what your title is, what your position is, how rich you are, your opinion may be respected, may be listened to, but if it's not backed by evidence, it's meaningless. It's totally discarded. And that's what this message is. Anyway, so I was hoping that I will give you some insight as to why these scientists all over the world went into a march. How does science affect your life? How is your personal life affected by science? Well, look, you know, about 12,000 years ago, we lived in caves. That's how we lived. And we were afraid of everything in nature. We didn't understand how anything worked. So we developed stories and myths about or tried to make up stories about how the universe works, because we didn't have anything else we didn't have any understanding. So for example, in the old Egyptian civilization, you know, during the days of the pharaohs, they used to think that the pharaoh was a son of God, and there's a god of Ra, that they worshipped the god of the sun, his name was Ra. The Greeks had a god for water and thunder, and they called him Poseidon. The Greeks also had a god called Zeus, and they believed that when the lightning was striking, that he was upset and sending that lightning to punish people. We also, when there is a solar eclipse, which means when the moon comes between the earth and the sun, and so you can see a very, very, very tiny ring of the corona of the sun, but you can't see the sun, it's blocked by the moon, as you can see in this picture. The Viking people, the people from the Scandinavian countries in the old days, used to think that there was a monster that's coming to swallow the sun and eat it up. Of course there was, how else could they explain this? They didn't have any means of really understanding eclipse and the movement of the sun, the movement of the moon and the size of the moon and the distances from the earth. They had no way of knowing that, so they made up that story. And these people thought that they brought their best warriors to make noise and scream, thinking that that will scare the monster. Now, normally the eclipse lasts for 2 or 3 minutes. So when the moon moved away and the sun showed up again, they said, see, it worked. So our shouting and screaming scared the monster and it went away. So that's a fun story, but what else? They made up stories to explain nature. They didn't have anything else. Here's an Irish, this is an Irish legend from the old times. They think that at the end of the rainbow, there's a pot of gold. Wouldn't that be nice? There is no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. The rainbow is just a breakup of visible light into different wavelengths, as we will explain later today, or in the next episode. And in Africa, they believed in voodoo, which means, you know, if you want to scare someone, or if you want to cause them some harm, or if you want to avoid harm from someone, then you can wear beads and have skulls on a stick. And it's just, what else can they think? They didn't know anything else. And here's another one. This is the zodiac, the signs of the zodiac, and even today a lot of people take that seriously. You know, the zodiac, which is associated with astrology, which is not a science. Astronomy is a science, astrology is not. But, you know, it's good entertainment, it's fun, but of course you can't take it seriously. It's total nonsense, but it still prevails until today, believe it or not. So, how is it different now? How has science changed your life? Well, look, now you have shelter, you have plenty of food. If you get sick, go to the hospital, you can have X-ray or MRI or ultrasound or PET scan or CAT scan. All these amazing diagnostic equipment in the hospital to help doctors find out what's wrong in your body. All of that is because of advances in science and our knowledge of how nature works. We also have antibiotics, and antibiotics are substances that help us kill infectious diseases. Diseases caused by bacteria can be fatal, can be very dangerous, and with antibiotics, now we don't have to worry about that anymore. The most famous antibiotic that everyone knows is penicillin. Of course, there are hundreds of other antibiotic preparations now, but the first one invented was penicillin, which saved a lot of lives in the old days. We also have home appliances, the dishwasher, the vacuum cleaner, the washer and dryer, the air conditioning, the heating, the radio, the TV, the microwave, the refrigerator. All of these advances that help us have a comfortable life at home came as a result of science and scientific research. We also, almost everybody now carries a smartphone, a phone that is almost as powerful as a computer, that can do amazing things. And this revolution in communication and computing only became possible because of science. And we have satellite communication. We have hundreds of satellites now orbiting around Earth that communicate and send information from one place to another. So if I send a message on my phone now to someone in China, the message goes all the way up to space. The satellites take that message and relay it back to that specific person in China. Isn't that amazing? And so this is only possible because of science. And of course we have transportation. Now you can go from one place to another on Earth in no time at all. Travel has made our life a lot easier and helped people meet and cooperate and join and understand each other more. And so society has changed drastically from the old days. We have more understanding, more communication, and more efficiency in doing the things we need to do on a daily basis. This is how science impacts your personal life. Well, how about society? How about society in general? Let's see the bigger things, things that are of concern to humanity in general and how science impacts them. But before discussing that, let me just mention one thing that is very important about science. We talked about the impact of science on your life, which means science helped us come up with all these different technologies. So is the purpose of science to achieve technological advancement? Of course, as a result of our knowledge in science, we achieve technological advancement, which is fantastic, makes our lives and civilization much more comfortable. But is that the only reason why we do science? No, because we're naturally created curious. We want to know how the world works, what is around us, what things look like. So this natural curiosity that we were born with is what drove us in the first place to discover the universe and how it works and to understand the natural world. So for example, when Michael Faraday first discovered electricity and magnetism, he was just tinkering and experimenting because he was curious about this amazing phenomenon of electricity and of magnetism. Was he really thinking of the unbelievable things that we have today as a result of electricity and magnetism? Of course not. And so if we suppress the ability of scientists to do research for the pure seeking of understanding of how nature works, then we will do a huge harm to our future generations, because we stop to explore how the real world really works, and we stop to understand nature in more depth and more detail, and as a consequence we suffer. So I just wanted to impress you with this point before moving on to talk about the impact of science on society in general. There's a huge number of issues that humanity in general is concerned with all over the world now. And all of these issues are affected and touched by science. We will not speak in detail about them because during the next few episodes we will discuss some of these issues. But I just want to touch on them quickly so that you have an understanding of how science and society have a very tight and important relationship. So look, fresh water is very important for us to survive. For industry we need fresh water to run. For our daily lives we need fresh water to drink and to cook and to wash and to clean ourselves. We need fresh water. And without fresh water then life can be impossible. So there's a limited source of fresh water on planet Earth. It's not really abundant. It's abundant in some areas, and some other areas hardly have any. So what really surprises me is this. Some people, believe it or not, are talking about having wars, waging wars against each other, fighting for the freshwater resources. I find that incomprehensible, because think about the harm and damage and tragedy and cost as a result of war. People would spend tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars killing each other over water. Why not use that same amount of money to desalinate and to find new technologies to use water from the ocean? Desalinate means remove the salt from it, make it so it's drinkable, it's usable for our daily lives. and then make that abundantly available for everyone. Some people say, oh yeah, it's, but it costs, you need a huge amount of energy to do that. Well, energy, we have a huge amount of energy coming from the sun every day. Solar energy. We can use that. Why not? So we need to stress more cooperation and more application of scientific knowledge and advancement in order to make our lives better, and not to spend the money on wars and killing and causing harm and destruction and tragedy in our lives. So that's just one example that I started with, because water is a very important part of our lives. Here's another one that's really, really important. It's called global warming. I think almost every day you turn on TV, or you read a magazine or a newspaper, you are subjected to information about global warming. What does that mean? Well, as a result of our industry, we're burning a lot of fuel. And the fuel, when you burn it, is converted to carbon dioxide and water. Carbon dioxide goes up in the atmosphere, and it prevents the heat from the sun of escaping back in space. Because a lot of heat comes from the sun, it hits Earth normally, and then it's reflected back. When there's carbon dioxide in the air, it traps that heat and makes it so that Earth is kept comfortably warm. Otherwise, the planet will be very, very cold. But if you have too much carbon dioxide, then you have too much heat trapped, and the planet will warm up. As a consequence of that warming up, we're going to have major problems, changes in weather and drought, so that you can't have enough rain for plants to grow in agriculture. So global warming is a serious issue. And planet Earth has almost warmed up about 0.7 of 1 degree Celsius in the last 100 years. So that's a lot of warming. And if it warms up to 2 or 3 degrees, the consequences can be very, very serious for humanity. Now, why is this an issue? Why are people talking about that? There are people who think, well, no, humans don't cause global warming. They disregard all the scientific evidence that's abundantly available all over the world, in every country on the planet, where scientists have done research to find out if this is true, if humanity's emission, we call it emission, of carbon dioxide is causing the Earth to warm up. And the evidence is very, very overwhelming and compelling and strong that this is the case. There's a term I would like you to know, or because you will hear it, it's the greenhouse effect. Because if you go to a greenhouse is made of glass. And so when the sun hits goes through the glass to the greenhouse, inside the greenhouse where you grow plants, the heat doesn't go back, because glass prevents the heat from leaving back into space. And so as a result, the greenhouse becomes really, really warm. So there are certain gases that have a greenhouse effect. Actually, water vapor is one of them, carbon dioxide is one of them, and methane gas is one of them. All of these are called greenhouse gases. So this is a very serious issue in today's society, and we should make sure that we understand these issues and understand the scientific basis of these issues and what we can do about them. Here's another issue that is very important: pollution. What does that mean, pollution? We can, as a consequence of our daily life, we produce sewage from our homes, we produce a lot of chemicals and waste from our factories, we produce a lot of garbage from our homes too, and if we dump all these gases and garbage and harmful chemicals, if we dump them in the rivers or in the oceans or in the seas or in the air or in the soil, the consequences can be very, very serious, because it can affect the lives of plants and animals and humans all alike. And these, the consequences of that can be very, very serious for our health and for the health of the environment where we live. So pollution is a very serious problem. and how to deal with the waste from industry and the waste from human daily lives is extremely important. And science has the means and the knowledge to actually eliminate a lot of these dangers before they reach the rivers and the air and the soil and the oceans and the seas of the planet. Here's another issue that is, actually this is becoming more and more serious worldwide. It's called desertification. What does that mean? Desert is, when there's no water, no plant, hardly any life exists. That's called desert. Desertification means a lot of lands that used to be fertile agricultural land on Earth is actually becoming desert. Why is that? It's because of climate change. It's because the water bed, we call them aquifers, water underneath our feet from depths of maybe 10 meters, 20 meters, 50 meters. This water is pumped up to use for agriculture. But if we pump all of it and nothing is left, it's not replenished. It doesn't come back. When it rains, of course, more water goes to deep below the soil. But there is not enough rain to replenish that water. So if we finish it quickly, then we're going to have a problem. So, and also deforestation. Deforestation means that in many areas, bulldozers are going to clear forest land and kill all the trees and the bushes there to make room for new city expansion of cities or towns, or to make room for agricultural products. But the tilling, the agricultural practice, the tilling of the soil is not done right, or the rotation of the crops is not done wisely and properly, so that the soil starts to die and fail to support future generations of plants. And as a result, we have desert. So these are serious issues, and only science makes us understand them, and only science can help us find out how to deal with them. Stem cell research, that's another very, very important issue in today's society. I don't want to go into too much detail because we will explain that in other episodes. But stem cells are cells that are able to change themselves into a different kind of cell. For example, you have cells in your eye that are different than the cells in your brain, or the cells in your liver, or the cells on your skin, or kidney cells, or blood cells. The stem cell in your body is able to change into a different kind of cell. So a stem cell can actually become a bone cell, or a muscle cell, or a skin cell, or a liver cell, or a brain cell. And so stem cells are really, really important for medicine, because if we understand them more and know how to use them, someone has a damaged liver or a damaged kidney. If we find out how to use the stem cells to grow and become liver cells to correct that damage so that the liver becomes healthy again, that will be an amazing advantage for our health and for our lives. And so stem cells are very important. Unfortunately, there is some objection to stem cell research by some countries, and that's because they think that, life is sacred, and so the stem cell is a living thing and you shouldn't be using it excuse me, I'm going to sneeze, but I'm not sneezing. We'll talk about that in other episodes. Why is it that sometimes you feel like sneezing, but the sneeze doesn't come out? Not enough histamine, but we'll talk about that in a different issue. Sorry about that. Almost sneezed, but it didn't come. Another very important part of our lives and our health is vaccination. When children are born, and especially in the first 5 years, they receive a lot of vaccination. And as a result of vaccination, we have eradicated many diseases like smallpox, poliomyelitis, measles, mumps, tuberculosis. A huge number of diseases has either been completely eradicated, that means disappeared from our lives, or some of them are almost eradicated. There's very little disease left. There's very little poliomyelitis left, which means paralysis. When you're totally paralyzed with your legs and you can't move, this is a serious disease caused by a virus called poliovirus, and we have a polio vaccine that was invented back in the 50s, and as a result, poliomyelitis hardly ever exists. But why is that an issue then, if it's so good? Why has this become an issue in society? Well, I'll tell you why. Unfortunately, a few years ago, or maybe 10 or 15 years ago, someone came up with a rumor, not based on science, it was totally based on imagination, fiction, that vaccines will actually cause other disease and harm your body, so they're not good for you. Really? Without evidence, just make up a statement like that? Unfortunately, the press, which means newspapers, magazines, TV, radio, journalists are not really educated well enough in science to tell what is true and what's not true, so they took the story and made a sensational issue out of it, and they scared a lot of people. As a result, a lot of people are scared of vaccination. They think it's going to kill their children, which was, of course, the opposite. It's going to save their children. And so they stopped vaccinating their children. And believe it or not, some of the diseases that we thought were almost eradicated and rarely ever show up anywhere in the world are starting to come back because of parents scared or afraid to give vaccination to their children. So that's another very important issue in society, where science and society have a clash due to the lack of understanding.